just,
You can't have it in different places.
yeah.
You can only have sound.
Yeah, so I think we maybe have it coming from the owl and the computer is
Yeah,
my
you can't
guess.
do that.
But I could hear just a little when I.
For human beings with different goals, values, things we want to accomplish. So my purpose for today is to talk a little bit about the science behind how emotions connect with spending money and how to think about that, ways to rethink about that and renew your perspective on how you're spending money. You may be coming in today feeling really, excited and confident, like I know where I'm spending my money and it's working well. And I love it. I want to learn a little bit more. You may be coming in thinking, gosh, I'm not sure where it's going and I'm not sure the purpose of it. And I feel like I could improve a little bit or learn something new. And so I hope I can connect with both sides here with the presentation today. So jumping right in, I'm still getting a little feedback. I'm going to step away so maybe I can hear myself a little less. There we go. So when we think of emotions and money, one of the things that I think comes to mind most is when I spend money, I feel something. So we often think of emotions as a consequence of how we spend money, which is true. We buy the thing that gives us a little happiness boost, we feel something from that. We purchase something large, we go on that big vacation, we get a sense of maybe accomplishment or sometimes regret. Emotions vary, positive, negative, somewhere in between. What we don't often think about, though, is emotions are also a cause, a catalyst for how we spend money, which I think is a very interesting area of research and something that I've dug into a little bit. So today, I want to talk about both the consequence and cause that emotions, the role that emotions play in those areas when we think about spending. And spending, think broadly, this is everything from the groceries that you buy to charitable giving, to gifting to kids, grandkids, friends, loaning money even. It can be the housing, vacations, anything that you use money to get something, whether it's a service or a good or a gift to someone else, is within that realm of spending. So that's pretty broad, right? And if you think about those behaviors, we do those every day. Whether it's filling up with fuel or buying some groceries or doing something, we're interacting with money to use it to accomplish something every single day. And we also feel something every single day. We're human beings. We're never devoid of feeling and emotions. So because there is this direct connection to being emotional human beings and using money every day, it's healthy to understand the connection that these two things have together. Before I jump into that, though, I think it helps to understand a little bit about emotions. It's a pretty big, category. You probably are thinking of, well, this could be anger, this could be happiness, this could be all these things. And what we find is human beings actually are not great at labeling emotions and recognizing them and taking a moment to say, okay, I'm feeling this way right now, and what is the name of that? We often think I'm generally feeling good or I'm generally feeling bad, but to understand emotions and to generate some power over them, we first need to be able to identify and label them and understand, why am I feeling this way? Do I want to feel this way right now? Is it helpful to me to feel this way to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish? So that awareness piece is really hard because we often go through the day habitually doing certain things and our emotions kind of are there, but we often don't recognize what they are and things like that. So I pulled this mood meter from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. Mark Brackett has developed a framework for understanding emotions, working through them, and generating,
Sarah, that's me. I'm so sorry.
No,
For
you're
some
fine.
reason, it's not tracking, so I'm gonna try to get it synced up.
no, you're good.
I'm very sorry.
And generating some, not control per se, but when we recognize how we're feeling and understanding how it's affecting what we do and how we behave, we then have a choice to maybe change that and wait on the behavior or go ahead and partake in it, whatever that means. So let me explain this, and then we'll look at the different quadrants and talk a little bit about how each quadrant is very useful for particular things. Negative emotions are not bad. Yellow is not always good. So don't equate, this with good or bad. This is just the human experience, and we need to feel all these emotions, and we do on a daily basis. So the way you read this chart is on the vertical axis here, it ranges from low energy to high energy, and on the horizontal axis, it ranges from low pleasantness to high pleasantness. So the yellow is the easiest to understand. Let's see if my pointer works, not on the screen. But yellow is probably pretty easy to understand. We have really high energy, really high pleasantness. This is the route of, if you're way up in the corner, you're ecstatic, elated, exhilarated, enthusiastic, optimistic. If you're a little toned down on energy, but still kind of pleasant, you're feeling hopeful, joyful, blissful, proud, playful. You're kind of in this reduced energy, but still really kind of pleasant and kind of fun to be around, right? When we get to the green quadrant, we are much lower in energy, but still really high on the pleasantness spectrum. So you can see emotions like grateful, blessed, restful, peaceful, comfortable. You're kind of feeling chill, calm, serene, those sort of things. And it makes sense, at least to me, this is really helpful because sometimes I can't identify the emotion, but I can very easily say if I feel pleasant or how much energy I have. Like right now, I'm probably up here. I have high energy because I'm speaking. Every time I get in front of people, I gotta have that energy, right? It's the natural thing that turns on when I'm in the classroom or whatever, high energy. And then generally, I really enjoy the interaction and teaching and those sorts of things. So even if I may be a little stressed on, traffic or whatever, but I'm getting here today, I immediately go here when I start to present. It's just a natural response. Anyway, that's the yellow and the green. Let's take a look at the other side. Low pleasant, and we range on energy, right? So it makes sense to see enraged, high energy, very low pleasant. Yes, you're angry, you're upset, you got a lot of energy behind it. It's very activating. The energy piece, I like to think of it as activation. If I'm really low, I'm probably less likely to go do something potentially, but if I'm really high energy, I'm likely to want to engage or activate or do something, etc. So same with the red, high energy, low pleasant, frustrated, angry, frightened, furious. A little bit lower on the energy here, still lowish on pleasantness, peeved, uneasy, irritated. When I get home and the house is dirty and the dogs are everywhere and that needs vacuumed, I'm definitely here a little irritated. I'm like, oh man. But then I think, oh, these are the wonderful things in my life and the kids and the dogs, and I kind of get over it and focus on the good stuff. Low pleasantness, low energy is the area of you're kind of feeling down, sad, way down here, you're in despair. So it makes sense you're very low energy, low pleasantness. It can be very debilitating too. Where do you go from there when you're feeling that down, it can be very difficult, right? So being fatigued, tired, bored is a little more activating. In terms of energy, still on the low pleasant side. I love looking at stress and anxiety because those are terms that often get used a lot when we think about money, financial stress, financial anxiety. Stress is more activating. It's interesting. Stress is more of a response to a particular stressor. Like inflation went up and now I'm feeling stressed about buying my groceries. You know, you're reacting to a particular stressor event, which is inflation, or maybe fuel at the gas tank, or something that happened related to money that could cause some stress. That stress reaction is a response to that stressor. Anxiety, though, is when you feel generally concerned or worried about something, but the stressor is not immediately present or it doesn't even exist, but you're worried about inflation coming back again, or if 2008, 2009, the big swings in the stock market, you might be having continued worry and stress and fear about that when it's not actually happening in the financial environment. Does that make sense? So anxiety is more internal. Is processing maybe what's happened in the past and what's could happen in the future, but the stressor is not immediately present. So financial anxiety can be just a little bit more, I think, debilitating and prevent maybe some helpful behaviors because, you know, look, it's lower on pleasantness, lower on energy, it can be kind of stuck there a little bit more. Stress is a really helpful response, actually. Recognize because you can identify, okay, this stressor needs to be addressed. You can develop an action plan to do it and sort of, you know, if inflation is happening and you're worried about buying groceries, then take a look at the cash flow and the budget and, you know, start developing a plan. Those are things that can help deal with stress in a really positive way. So, does this make sense? Okay. So, sorry. Let's go to the next slide, maybe. Okay. So the research says is this yellow quadrant is an excellent quadrant for creativity and brainstorming. When we're feeling highly pleasant and high energy, that's a really excellent quadrant to think broadly and creatively, come up with solutions that you might not have thought of otherwise. There, and I'll show it later, but there's a scientific theory that says when we feel positive emotions, it changes our brain such that we have an expanded view of the situation and we can see broadly, be creative, brainstorm, connect with others, come up with really creative solutions. We contrast that to negative emotions. Negative emotions, from an evolutionary perspective, have always helped us save us from danger, save our lives, deal with a particular threat. So negative emotions tend to narrow our scope to the particular thing that could potentially hurt us, harm us, cause threat. So if we are responding to inflation when we're feeling very stressed, anxious, and maybe worried, irritated, maybe furious with whoever we think has caused this, right? We are going to be so narrowly focused on that situation, we might make financial changes that affect other things, but we can't see that because we're operating from a place of this negative emotionality that's in response to that particular threat. Does that make sense? So that's not necessarily bad. I like to use a basic example of, you know, if my kid were about to run out into the road, I would respond with, you know, worry, fear, and I would go get my child to prevent them from getting harmed. So responding to that from sort of that negative place helps me directly save their life, right? That's good. That's not a time to creatively brainstorm how to prevent my child from running out into the middle of the road. You know, that may be a later conversation, like, okay, let's talk about this. But if I'm talking about my child about that, I need to be personally in a place of, you know, maybe optimism, enthusiastic, maybe, you know, proud that my child has this energy and wants to explore, but let's reshape that into safety, you know. So that's a little example of how emotions might interplay with that. Green is a great quadrant and emotional place for consensus building and decision making. So when we're feeling kind of content, calm, satisfied, grateful, we can take from a lower energy perspective, still a broad view, and make a decision that we feel very good about. So this is a great place to connect with others, to work through conflict, build consensus, etc. The research does show that when we have high positive emotions, that including high negative emotions, we can often make financial decisions that are risky and that can harm us. So negative emotions make sense. Most people hear about like impulsive shopping and things like that. If we're stressed or worried or whatever, maybe we'll go shopping and, try to feel better as a result. We also see, when we're feeling completely ecstatic and things like that, sometimes we discount risk. We might go buy that thing or do that thing that you're like, oh, it's okay. It'll all be fine. It'll work itself out. I'm just going to think about that later. Those could be risky situations and that could harm you later. We've all done them. We've all been there, right? So that's a little bit of the science about how some of these emotions can affect financial behavior. Blue here is kind of a great quadrant for empathy. Empathy is connecting with, what others are experiencing, feeling what they're feeling, connecting with them relationally. So I know that doesn't directly connect with money, but oftentimes when we're in relationships and we're dealing with money and maybe gifting and things like that, having empathy and showing empathy, connecting with that other person on what they're going through is often helpful in those conversations. So that's a basic overview of the mood meter and how each quadrant is really useful. One is not good or bad, but in different situations for different purposes, they can be used to help you through that and make decisions. So when I teach this in class, I often ask students, what's the best quadrant for financial decision making? And it's so funny because I get all these different answers, which is great. And it also means it can depend a lot on your perspective. The research does show generally here is good, but I also say, okay, if you're so cozy and serene, you might be asleep or meditating, and you might not be in a place to make a decision there, right? So maybe that's too low energy. Up here, you might not be counting for risk all the way, but you can definitely think creatively and brainstorm. So, I think, somewhere around the high green, low yellow, like right about here is probably a good spot. What do you think? Do you have ideas or think about some of your own financial decisions? When you think of one that you feel you made a really good decision, have you ever thought about how you were feeling at the time you made it? You don't have to share if you don't want to, but I love interaction too if you want to. I think about decisions I've made, especially with my spouse, because you might differ with a significant other on what to do with your money. So that's another point when you're working with someone around financial decisions and you might not agree. If you're angry and trying to work through it over here, what happens, when you're trying to work through conflict? You don't, right? It's just you're gridlocked. But if you're over here in the green, you can listen, have some empathy, and understand the other side and come to your decision. So in my mind, the decisions I feel best about are those that, one, I've taken time. They haven't been quick, spur of the moment. I've taken time to explore, okay, feeling happy, angry, sad, and then here. So giving yourself time to travel the mood meter a little bit with the financial decision you're going to make. Now, you wouldn't want to do that necessarily with a cup of coffee from Starbucks, right? Those are little things that you've got it in your budget, you're planning for it. It's just you buy a coffee, you get a little boost from it, or whatever that might be. It's fine, but those big decisions that lock you into maybe certain aspects of a relationship or a big purchase that will take your time and means, okay, now you are going to be going to that second home more or traveling a little more or doing something different, making sure you've really explored and felt what that might mean to you from an emotional perspective, and then come to a place around here where you're feeling okay. I feel like I understand this purchase. I know what it will mean to myself and my family, and I felt these things, but I'm here and now I'm making a decision that I feel really good about. That's sort of where the science kind of says you want to be. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is just a little bit of research to extend on the idea of emotions and money. Got a timing issue with the clicker. I think. Once. There we go. Not touching it. All right, a very just high level overview slide on what the science kind of says about this relationship between emotions and money. Because the big questions for a scientist is causality. What direction does this arrow point? And basically, what it says is emotions are a consequence of money. So there's research that says, okay, having income, having a larger network to some extent can make us happy, but that is still a very mixed research. Sometimes it's just correlational, relational results that don't actually show causality. And you can never prove a causal relationship in research, but you can see evidence for it. But there's a little bit of evidence that having more financial wealth, like income and net worth, it gives us the opportunity to spend money in ways that can support your well-being. That's really what it can do. But more is not necessarily better. More money, more problems sometimes, more complexity in your financial situation. So it's not like having billions of dollars. You're going to be so much happier than someone who has maybe 100,000 in net worth or 200. So really, all money does, and this is my opinion, as a financial planner in the past and practicing as a researcher, money is a tool. And if you have more, it gives you more opportunity to accomplish some of those things that you want to accomplish, have impact on the world. But that doesn't necessarily just make you happier by simply having it. The research shows a correlation. There's some interesting research here about how we spend money. And when we spend money in certain ways, the research has shown that some things can impact our happiness and positive emotions more than others. And I'll go through some of that here in a second. This is my most interesting, I think, area of research. I've done some stuff here, and several other researchers had too, which says that positive emotions can cause us to behave certain ways with our money, which I think is cool because if we understand emotions and can have some introspection on how we're behaving, we have power over those behaviors, and therefore we can affect how we use money and how we spend it and how we maybe earn it and grow it and invest it. So the research suggests that positive emotions help us earn money, earn income, and succeed at work if you're in your career phase. It also helps us exert willpower and self-control over urges and addictions. So if we tend to maybe shop and buy certain things and we know, okay, this is not in my budget, I do want to cut back. It can be very hard when you're intertwined with a lot of negative emotionality to make that change. But if you can do something that helps you feel better, like maybe it's a walk, or maybe it's engaging in a hobby, or talking to a friend or a grandkid or a child, getting some positive emotional boost from those things that give us a sense of well-being in life can help us then exert more self-control over something we want to change in our life. Does that make sense? So enhanced feelings of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is like grit. It's like feeling like if I take a step forward, I will succeed, and I'm going to keep persisting. With high self-efficacy tend to set meaningful goals and persist when they fail towards reaching those goals. They keep taking steps towards doing it. So it encompasses resiliency, grit, and this belief that you will succeed if you do something and behave. Even if you fail on the interim, you know if I keep going, I will get there. So that's the grit part of self-efficacy that I love. Positive emotions support saving money. Think about the effect that positive emotions can have on your ability to exert self-control. You can make those intraday decisions of, oh, I'm not going to spend money on that because I know I want to save, or I don't want to pull as much from my portfolio, so I'm going to hold off on that because I'm good. I don't need it. I'd rather leave that money there, or I'd rather save the money. So positive emotions help us make those behaviors. Have a preference for the future, like have a longer future time perspective, kind of get you out of the day-to-day sort of rut we might be in. Positive emotions help us see more broadly and widely. Stay out of debt, take time before making decisions, and building wealth. So those are sort of a whole host of really positive financial behaviors and psychological perspectives that help us interact well with our money. Okay, this is the theory I told you about. I just think it's a really interesting theory. It's really widely used, well known within positive psychology. and it's been applied to financial behaviors, but it really kind of backs up what I was saying about how positive emotions help us think more broadly and widely, and negative emotions are a bit more constricting, and that's not bad. Negative emotions are good because they help us identify something we need to address. However, when we need to make big decisions about our investment portfolio, or when to retire, or how much to give to the kids, if we're trying to make that decision when we are stressed, worried, fearful, we're gonna maybe fixate on maybe a certain solution that would directly address the problem, but we're not gonna be able to see the broader impact of that solution. I like to think of couples making decisions. So you may think that, okay, I've got to stop these gifts to the kids because I'm really worried about running out of money. And all I can see right now is that we have to stop the gifts to the kids so that we don't run out of money. Where your spouse might be thinking, okay, we don't have to stop the gifts to the kids entirely. We could maybe scale back a little bit, or maybe it's not the gifts to the kids. Maybe it's something else that we can cut back on, that this is important to us to give to the kids. And maybe we continue that, and there's other things we can change. Or let's run some additional models with our financial planner and figure out what's the impact of working an extra 2 years. Because I love my job and I want to do that. If you're just fixated on the potential or threat of the problem, it's very hard to see those other solutions and possibilities because you're just trying to get rid of the worry, right? And the fear. I've been there, speaking from experience as well. So again, negative emotions, not bad, part of the normal human experience, but not helpful or trying to make big decisions. So in terms of positive emotions, they have this effect. Hold on. This is supposed to go away. Let's see if the animation is working. Oh, it's not. I'm so sorry. That takes the air out of my balloon a little bit. I'll just describe it to you then. But he's looking out on this really beautiful panoramic view of trees and of light and the sky. And so if you think of this is what it might look like for negative emotion, you just get fixated on one thing, but you don't see the bigger picture. So when this goes away, it expands out, you can just see so many more possibilities. You see the whole picture. So it's just a way of showing that theory. Okay. All right, I'll talk from there, because the big question is, well, great, you're telling me to go be happy, and I'll do better with my money, or I'll do something different, right? So that's not incredibly helpful, other than understanding that how we feel impacts what we do, and then what we do impacts how we feel. So this is a circular thing that can be kind of a challenge as well. There's a whole field of research and practice of positive psychology, within psychology, that has developed to help us understand how to kind of maximize how we feel in life and to achieve that sense of well-being and holistic functioning and flourishing. Traditional psychology has largely focused on what researchers term a deficit paradigm within psychology, which is if you're depressed, helping you be less depressed, or if you have another mental health condition, helping you get to a point where you're functioning in life as a spouse, a coworker, as a friend, as a parent. And positive psychology came along because the researchers and practitioners said, well, that's not enough. It's wonderful to help people function, but when you get to functioning, how do you move the needle further? How do you realize that sense of a flourishing life where it's full, you feel connected, you feel like you're maximizing what's happening in your life, and you're fully participating and engaging in it, and you're mindful of what that is like. So positive psychology came along to help fill that void from a research and practice perspective, and it helps us understand what are maybe some interventions and what role does positive emotions play in our life and how we cultivate that, and etc. So I don't have time to cover everything positive psychology has come up with, but there's a lot of this really helpful, and that theory, that broadened and built theory of positive emotions comes from positive psychology. It helps us explain how our brain functions. So I'm going to draw from this to talk a little bit about well-being theory, which we will get back to money and spending, I promise, because from my research and my practitioner experience, it's helpful to have some sort of framework to think about how you're using your money And in what ways, if you use it in those ways, will it actually help you achieve that sense of well-being, full and flourishing life, that then also helps you feel like you're making really good decisions about your money and you're spending it in ways that you know make sense to you, that you feel good about. So this theory helps us do that. I'll just explain it real quick. There's just 5 elements that connect to that sense of a flourishing life. This was developed by Mark Seligman. This actual diagram I pulled from one of my papers that I published. So that's those citations. But the 5 elements are positive emotion, which we've been talking a lot about. Just think of the mood meter framework for those ideas around what are positive emotions. I would say it covers yellow and green, those more high, pleasant emotions. Engagement is the sense of full psychological immersion into like a task or activity that really pulls you in. You lose sense of time, you kind of lose sense of self, you lose sense of other things you have to do. You're not really worrying, you're kind of in the zone. You might get this from hobbies. It could be going for a walk and being in nature. I mean, this, how people achieve engagement will differ from person to person. I have certain hobbies that I do. I love to sew. I love to also cook. So I'm in the kitchen a lot. And when I'm in the kitchen, I kind of get into the zone. Although I get a little frustrated with all the dishes, I go from in the zone to really annoyed to like, oh, this smells really nice. And, so I go back and forth a little bit. Sewing is really fun. I like to make things. I like to create. It's sort of my creative side that I don't use a lot in research. Being creative in research is not always a great idea. You kind of have to follow a method, but I get that psychological immersion from a lot of those activities that I participate in. So for you, it might be very different. So just be thinking about these elements and where you draw those in your life. And also the way this connects with money is there can be a financial cost to those things that bring us these elements like engagement. I've spent quite a bit of money on sewing machines, sergers, cover stitch machine, all the gadgets that go with it. My goodness, you can really, it kind of adds up. Cooking, there's so many awesome hands and knives and all this stuff, and it adds up. So when you have something you like to do that draws you in, it often involves some sort of financial cost or commitment. And so just be thinking about that and how money might connect to it as we go through these things. Relationships, this is the sense of full, supportive, meaningful relationships in your life. That doesn't, and not all of these have a financial component, but they certainly can. So relationships might mean some financial support to someone in your life. That also helps facilitate that connection. It could be spending time with somebody that's important in your life to have those supportive relationships around you. Meaning is feeling like you're contributing to something greater than yourself. You can get this through charitable giving with money or your time. It could be religious. It could be political affiliation. It could be really anything. It could be teaching. I get a lot of meaning from teaching and helping my students become wonderful researchers, financial planning practitioners, to help people, not just because it's fun to create awesome financial, wizards out there, but they are helping people realize their financial potential in their life. And I think that is such a cool thing. You can really change lives that way. So I get a lot of meaning through that. Accomplishment is a sense of success. I did it. I did well. I feel successful. I achieved something. That can, you can get an accomplishment from really anything. I tell you, when I first threaded my cover stitch machine, my serger, I'm like, yeah, okay. I got a sense of accomplishment, first frustration, and then accomplishment from that. If I cook something new, or if I, do something interesting at work, all those things added to the sense of accomplishment. So the idea of this theory is that when we experience these things, and I will add too that there are different times in our life where some of these things might be more important to us than others. So maybe the accomplishment bucket, like, oh, I'm good. I've accomplished a lot. I don't really feel like I need a lot of that right now. And so you might be emphasizing maybe time and financial commitments to some other spots where you feel like, I don't get that sense of engagement. I can't tell you the last time I was immersed in something because I feel so darn busy and I just can't take the time. Well, that's a moment to pause and say, can I loved so much in the past, but haven't done for a long time. So there may be different ways you emphasize these buckets, but the idea is to feel like you're living a full, meaningful, flourishing life. At a basic level, these things need to be present at some level. Does that make sense? That theory connects well with this. This is a popular press book based on scientific research. So it's just an easier to read than an academic paper. So the main takeaways from the research on how we use money and how it results in feeling a certain way or feeling happy. These are the ways that they suggest using money based on the research for spending that results in greater happiness. First bullet point, buy more experiences than material goods. So this is basically going on a vacation instead of maybe buying a new outfit or a new car. Now you may need a new car, you may need a new outfit. That's okay. That's not bad or wrong. But if you're looking for ways to get more enjoyment, happiness, fulfillment, maybe from money, generally speaking, experiences tend to be a bit more holistic. You've got memories that last a long time. If you're maybe going on a trip or doing something with somebody else, you have that relational component. So you kind of hit positive emotions, relationships, maybe even meeting. Maybe the experience could be helping somebody, volunteering. It could be teaching. I mean, it could be, I'm just speaking from what comes to mind for me. So what comes to mind for you could be totally different than that. And that's okay. That's where no judgment. Everyone's different. What you enjoy, the experiences you would choose might be very different from the person who you mentioned. So material goods, we tend to get used to things and stuff. Like we adjust to it emotionally. Like it's cool when we get it, and we get used to it. And then you get on this, they call it a hedonic treadmill where you're just chasing that positive emotion button. So the more you can, I think, focus purchases on multiple areas within the Old framework, you can get more lasting enjoyment and fulfillment. So if something gives you a sense of not only positive emotion, but a connection with somebody else, a memory, like you might go get coffee for yourself, but can you bring a friend or a family member or your spouse, go get coffee together? That's more fun than getting coffee yourself, right? Potentially. So that's just an idea. Spending money on others, when we spend money on other people, again, it connects with relationships, the sense of gratitude and connection with others. No, we don't want to do that. You don't want to just do, some of these things, as you can easily go overboard too, like, doing too much or whatnot. But anyway, third bullet point, buy small pleasures rather than fewer larger ones. So it's this idea of we tend to adjust quickly to purchases. So if you have a large purchase, you'll tend to adjust emotionally to it more quickly. So the science says if you can spread it out over time, maybe you don't take one big vacation, maybe you take 5 or 6 smaller ones throughout the year. Now, it's not to say don't take that big vacation ever, but if you're trying to sort of maximize that experience and that enjoyment, potentially taking more smaller ones could result in greater happiness. Delaying consumption, we have anticipation of looking forward to something as a big boost to life. So that's something that shows up in the literature. When we delay consumption, we look forward to it and we have that sense of enjoyment. That's neat. Next bullet, consider how peripheral features affect day-to-day lives. So when you buy something, you're often not just buying the item, you're also buying all of the time it takes to keep it looking nice, actually using it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the thing might sound really neat on the surface, but when you think about, okay, now that I have this, I'm going to have to buy this, I'm going to have to spend time doing this, and this. You might rethink the enjoyment of actually having it. So the example that comes to my mind, although my husband and I are very happy with having this, and we did consider these peripheral features when we bought it, but we bought a Class A motor coach, an Integra. It's like this big bus. So it falls in the RV category, but it is just a vehicle. It's a bus, it's a 43-foot bus. procedures. I had to study the state of Texas CDL manual and get a Class B driver's license. Didn't really think of that when we got into it. Oh, oh man, I don't really want to be reading this right now, but I know I have to. The maintenance on this thing is expensive and it needs something all the time, right? Where are we going to store it? We didn't want to put our new motor coach baby just outside subject to hail and dirt from Lubbock, so we had to find a place to store it. And we need to use it. This makes no sense for us if we don't do lots of small trips and go places. But my husband and I wanted to do more frequently with the kids. And when we looked at it and preferences around travel and all those things, motor coach just made sense for us. It hit that positive emotion bucket. I'm not sure we're hitting engagement just yet. Like that's a psychological emergency. I don't know if we're there yet on this one, but we definitely hitting relationships. We're doing things with the kids we didn't do before. Meaning, huge sense of meaning and exposing the kids to some cool things. We drove all the way out to Legoland in California in May, and Legos will come back during my slide. I'll show you in a second. But that was fun for us to do this with the kids while they're at an age that they can enjoy it and love it. And it's so cool for them. Accomplishment, when I learned to drive that thing, I will tell you I felt a sense of success I never would have felt had I not actually learned to drive this bus. So that was a huge purchase where if we thought about the maintenance and all these other things and we said, oh gosh, that sounds awful, that would be a moment to reconsider actually buying it. But when we connected it to, okay, our well-being, it gives us this, we are willing to deal with those peripheral features because we have a greater purpose behind this purchase. Does that make sense? So those are big deal peripheral purchases. Comparison shopping makes us less happy. So we want to comparison shopping not to be confident that we have a good deal. But if you do it too much, you tend to then start feeling like, okay, I've got to step up here, here, and here. I could get more features. We did this with the motor coach a little bit, but I did it after we bought it. It was just like this dumbest thing to do. Okay, I'm judging myself here, right? We bought it, and then I'm like, oh, well, let me look at the new cornerstone. Look at this. And now I'm like, but, they're still very happy with what we purchased. But be careful about comparison shopping, especially after the fact, because all that results in is regret, and you don't need that. Feel good about your purchase, stick with it, love it, be confident in it, and enjoy it, right? So pay close attention to the happiness of others. My husband and I talked to other people that had RVs and coaches and things like that. But he's like, how do you like it? And I talked to people who hated that kind of travel, talked to people that loved it. And really consider, okay, these are the things that people that really don't like it, these are the things that frustrated them, that they didn't enjoy. Is that true for us? Like, can we relate to that, yes or no? Or could we accept the things and maybe roll with some of the issues that other people had in a different way to where it doesn't bother us as much? And those that love that kind of travel, does that make sense? Do they connect with us? Are we kind of similar? So other people's experiences, especially with larger purchases, can be really helpful to figure out what are the chances that I'm going to feel good about this and like it, and maybe even not be too bothered by some of the peripheral features after I buy it. Does that make sense? So that's what at a very high level, the science says around how we use money and how we engage in spending behaviors to protect happiness. And that being said, I want to bring in the notion of personality-based spending. There's also a growing body of research that says there is a psychological fit on happiness. So what this is saying is that based on who we are, our personality, how we tend to think, feel, and behave, we might get more of a boost out of maybe spending money on experiences than someone with a different personality. So think about the big 5 personality traits: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. The first letters of those terms spell ocean, so they're also known as the ocean traits. So think about someone who's really high on extroversion. Those that are more extroverted tend to get more energy with being around others, engaging in maybe larger events where they can really connect and talk and just be around people. Those who are more introverted don't get as much energy from that. It drains them. It's less fulfilling. They need that time to kind of regroup and be by themselves or be with a smaller group of people. It's not always being alone. It just may be a more focused group. So going to spending money on a big birthday bash might be wonderful for someone who is more extroverted. That might sound awful to someone who is more introverted. So that would be an experience purchase, maybe a big trip or a birthday bash or some big event. And the research would generally say, well, that's an experience that would be probably more happiness boosting than buying, some particular item. But for the extroverted person or introverted person, that same experience might be more draining than it is boosting, and they might be better off buying like a thing or doing an experience or an event with a smaller group of people. So it's really important to, yes, pay attention to what that research is saying, but think about who you are and where you get the most enjoyment, the most energy, the most meaning, purpose, etc. Because that's unique to you. The research just kind of gives a guide on generally, based on the average population, these are the things that tend to boost happiness spending. But this is what I love with the practice and application side of personal finance, because it's about the individual person sitting right there and where you derive your boost from. Okay. So keep that framework in mind for Flourish. Well-being theory. Ideas for change, how to boost well-being to get more well-being from your money. So a little in-class exercise here. I want you to think about, well, the exercise is not the slide is coming, but you might want to jot this down and I can send you the slides. If you want to do a basic assessment of, your perma-flourishing, researchers love creating questions around these things so they can study populations and analyze data. So there are scaling questions for perma-flourishing, meaning in life, happiness, positive negative effect, optimism, relationships, work-life satisfaction, character strengths. Through the University of Pennsylvania, where Martin Seligman does research and teaches. He's sort of the guy that started positive psychology or made it a big thing. So if you want to have a basic assessment of where are you right now in some of these areas, that would be a way to do that. Tina, I'll send the slides.
Okay.
I don't think I sent them to you, but you can send them out. And you can grab the link that way. But it's the University of Pennsylvania, Authentic Happiness. I will double check that one too. I don't think it's changed. I'll check on my phone before we.
It's a self-awareness test, is that what you said?
Yeah, it has. If you go to the website, you do have to just enter a basic user profile because they're gonna gather your data. If you fill that out, they're gonna use it as, oh, okay, we're gonna put this in our sample. You don't have to enter anything like a credit card or anything personal like that. Write your name and you create a little user profile. I don't get anything from that. Right? I just think it's neat to be able to go and actually assess your well-being level and kind of see where you are. So, and the reason why this could be helpful is when it comes to money, this is the exercise that I have people think about. So when you think about those permanent categories, think about, well, how am I spending money in these areas? And where would I like to spend money in these areas in the future? The well-being theory and practice, think about positive emotion. And specifically for you, when you spend money, what gives you that positive emotional boost? There's lots of opportunity for this. It could be, I put some ideas here just based out of my own head: travel, sporting events, concerts, dining out, clothing, jewelry, spa, theater. These are the little or big boosts that make you feel happy. There's nothing wrong with that. Buy something, feel happy, not guilty, happy, right? So that's okay. Engagement, hobbies and activities tend to be where we get the sense of engagement, like reading, playing a musical instrument, gardening, exercise. I gave you examples of sewing and cooking. There's lots of ways you can get engagement. Relationships, gifts or experiences with others, meaning I gave some of these examples of the top about these, but charitable, political, religious, special interest groups, for example, could be like teaching or community outreach, those sorts of things. Accomplishment could be education, could be sports, hobbies, professional development. I told you learning to drive this motor coach and getting a class B license and passing that road test. Actually had to get out on the road and drive this thing and have someone like grade me. It was really nerve wracking. But I felt so accomplished after. It was great. So these things often involve some level of money. So think about when I'm planning my spending, am I planning for my spending to get things and experiences that help me realize more well-being through that kind of framework? So I like that framework because it gives you a way to think about how you're spending your money specifically, right? And time and money are our two largest resources. So it doesn't have to be a financial commitment. It could be a time commitment, volunteering or hanging out with somebody or going for a walk, engagement. You don't have to be doing like a hobby and spending money to get that. It could be the walk is a basic example. Anyone can do that. It's easy. Reading a book, etc. Relationships, calling a friend, a family member. There's a lot of free education endeavors like Khan Academy. There's low-cost sports or hobbies. So it's not only where am I spending money, but I think it's also where am I spending my time and money to support well-being in those areas. It's a great way to think about it. Here's another example of my perma. One thing that I have spent a lot of money on, in addition to my motor coach. Remember I told you Legos would come back in my presentation. My kids and husband have always loved Legos, and I never got it. Like it was like, okay, that's cool. Buy the Star Wars thing. Okay, whatever. And then I would, vacuum up Legos, stand on Legos for my feet. Like these were kind of cool, but a pain at the same time. And then Lego came out with their botanical collection. I said, ooh, that sounds cool. A, can't keep plants alive, and B, these do not need watered, and they look really fun. I can kind of, enjoy some Legos alongside the kids and my husband and etc. So I think the first Lego botanicals I bought, I think it was the Bird of Paradise. I can't remember. It's either that or the bouquet. I can't remember which one. But I built it and it was just so much fun. I got a sense of like accomplishment because you had to follow instructions and do it right. The piano was more difficult because the keys moved. I thought about bringing it, but I kept playing in my head the fact that I probably dropped it in a parking lot. This Lego shattered and that'll be pain to build back. So I thought, I'll just take some pictures. So these are all in my office. But this one gave me an even bigger sense of accomplishment because you connect it to an app on the phone and it'll actually play a song. The sound comes out of the phone, but the keys move and it functions off a gear that spins on the inside. And if you don't build it right, it won't work. So first I didn't build it right and it wasn't working right. So I had to troubleshoot and diagnose and actually get it functioning. So that was a sense of accomplishment actually working through that. It gives me building these things, give me a sense of engagement and immersion. So I kind of get in the zone, I follow the instructions and I build and click and all these other things. It's interesting, it helps me stop worrying sometimes because it brings me into the present with the physical thing I'm doing right now. So I also like to build these in the evening with the kids when we're maybe watching a movie or something else. It involves other people, so this relationship. My kids help me build the piano. And so we do it together. So it's not just the piano sitting on my desk, it's that thing that the kids and I built together that's sitting on my desk that I got a sense of accomplishment from actually doing it. And that gives me meaning too. Again, it's not just a piano, it's this thing that helps support some relationship with kids. This is personal financial planning. I built this when I became school director. The faculty and staff gave me this Lego Dots message board kit. So that was fun, but that was actually hard because I had no instructions for actually what to build inside. So I had the kids help me come up with ideas on what can I build with these Lego dots. And we came up with a tree and bunnies. So this is the School of Financial Planning. Gosh, this is the Van Gogh Starry Night. Love that one. That was really fun. engraved on my Lego block. So I'm nerding out on this totally too much. Succulents are awesome. I love the orchid. The bouquet is cool. This is the bonsai tree. The student gave me laughing Buddha figures. I think they're so awesome. So anyway, I've spent a lot of money on Legos, and so has my husband and kids. These are not cheap things, especially when you buy a lot of them. But when I look at how we spend money and I look at these large purchases, my husband could easily say, Sarah, what the heck? Why are you spending so much on Legos? That's kind of what I said in my head to him all those years with all the Star Wars things and all of that. But now I get why, how it can connect with the person and who they are. And, it connected with all those permanent elements. And so I feel no guilt about my Lego purchases because I know what they mean to me. And if I'm planning in my cash flow budget for, okay, I know I want these permanent elements. If I'm spending money in ways that help me get there, yeah, it might be a lot, but if it's affordable and in my budget and I can do it, then that's awesome, and I should not feel guilty. I should play my Legos proudly and enjoy it, right? So this is an exercise. You want to take a minute and think about, for you, what are some of the things? Just take a minute because we have time. When it comes to positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment, think about today. Think of maybe one or two things. How are you spending your time and money today in ways that get you to or help you realize some of these permanent elements? You can jot it down. Think of it in your head. It's okay if you can't. Reflect on it for the next couple days, right? And just start paying attention. What are you doing? How are you spending your money? What does it mean to you? I bet you're already spending money in ways that get you there. Maybe spending money in ways that soak up maybe one bucket and not others. That's not necessarily bad. Like I think there's a time in my life where I was spending money for positive emotion, but I wasn't doing a whole lot here, And I didn't realize that till like later in my life when I could reflect back on my 20s, right, early 20s, and realize what was I doing? I wasn't maximizing my sense of fulfillment in life, and part of it was because I was chasing, wanting to feel those positive emotions and not really understanding the impact that some of these other things. So once you've done that and maybe thought of a couple things, you may also notice that okay, maybe there's some areas where I don't really think that I'm, generating a lot of meaning, with some of my activities, time, money. So think about the future. Where do you want to be in terms of these elements? And what are some ideas for some things you could do to achieve that? And so when you're thinking of this in the future, think of, okay, am I happy with where things are going today? Or do I want to make some changes so that I have more time, have more money available to put towards these other things? And that's where the rubber meets the road, right? That's where you impact your life and change it purposefully in a way that connects with who you are today and who you are and where you want to be. And when you buy your Legos, buy them with confidence.
Yeah. It's hard when you're as old as I am to distill.
Well, you saved, you have, financial resources to spend. It's time, live your life and use that money and spend it. I've done some other research with psychology portfolio withdrawal rates, which I did present at Ollie. And it's interesting to think about how when you save money during your life, it can be really hard to then actually take the money out and spend it, because in some ways that bucket of money represents your hard work. It could even be some inheritance money, and you've got emotions and feelings tied up with where that money came from. So money is more than just a number. It can mean stuff to us. And so when you start spending money that you've earned over your career, that can be painful to start pulling that out. And sometimes I remember in practice, I had to tell clients, it's okay to spend money. This is why you saved. It's a year for you to buy the Legos and enjoy. And so sometimes people weren't sure like how much can I spend and not run out of money. And financial professionals can run models and do statistics to say, okay, here's a safe level of spending. If you have that number, like your safe level of spending, spend it, enjoy it. That's what it's there for, right? And what this presentation tells you or helps you with is, okay, I have it. Now, how can I spend it in ways that have the most impact on me, on others, and to have that holistic and flourishing sense of well-being in life? So, other ideas for minimize emotional impact on and from spending. Developing habits, like if you're wanting to change something to maybe free up time and money to do something else, just know that behavior change can be hard. It can be hard to change and maybe stop buying something or doing something different with your time. We're creatures of habit. We have a status quo bias. We kind of like the way things are, even though we know we don't like it, right? It's familiar. There's nothing wrong with that. So it can be hard to change habits, but when you change behavior for a long enough period of time, it becomes your new habit, and so that you can get it as a patient. Spending rules, things, having rules of thumb to help you with making decisions around spending, like the PERMA framework. It's kind of a rule of thumb. If I'm making a big purchase, let me think a bit more broadly about what that means to me and how that's impacting my life. Spending rules could even be as simple as, like, my husband and I have a spending rule. It goes something like this: if Costco doesn't have it, we really need to question if we actually need it. So, that was not a commercial for Costco, but it is true. Like, I try hard not to run to the grocery store just to get that one thing. I do what I can with what's at Costco. And if there are things I want to make, I'll maybe go to United or Market Street like once a month or once every couple months to fill up on that unique little thing. But I'm not just going to run out and get it for that particular thing I want to make. I'll adjust what I make or I'll make something different. So that's just a spending rule that keeps us from running around town and spending more on groceries than we want to, Have a plan, not a budget. I hate the word budget. It's a dirty word, even though I use it a lot, because everyone tends to know what a budget means, but it feels constricting. It feels like you're putting these, really rigid boundaries around what you can spend. So really what a budget is really just a plan. It's a map. It's okay, here's my number I know I want to spend. Here's where I want to deploy that money in ways that help me stay fed, alive, healthy, and feeling well and whole, right? So PERMA, that well-being framework, helps you develop that spending map for the wellness, like well-being side. Make it realistic and make your plan flexible, okay? We can't perfectly estimate the cost of things, so, the advice I like to give is, make sure you are building in enough cushion for that extra vacation or that extra thing you might want to do that you just didn't think of. Give yourself a room. Don't fully maximize and plan out every single penny, because you're also setting yourself up to not follow that plan, and that may bother you. So make sure you build in enough flexibility and know that it's okay to adjust and change along the way. And if you're changing behavior, kind of like dieting, it's not realistic that you'll never again eat cookies. Don't do that to yourself. Be realistic. Say, I'll eat a cookie. I'm going to have one, like once a week or once a month or whatever that may be. With financial behavior, make it realistic so you're not setting yourself up to fail in mental stress and have anxiety. Talked about flexibility. So cash cushion, we often think, okay, having a cash cushion for unexpected things, but really there are no unexpected things. We know that unexpected things will happen. We just don't know how to label them yet because we're not sure what they are. So it's sort of a weird twist or reframe on this, that we need to have a cash cushion because there's things in the future that we cannot yet identify, but we know they will happen because they always happen. And I mentioned his well-being as a guide for spending. Also, again, really think about personality. There's some neat research there. When you match spending with your personality, who you are, then you have big impact. So these are just some more books that are based on research, but easier to read, more popular press books. Happiness Advantage, Flourish by Seligman. This is the one that has some of the spending science in it. And a couple more. Permission to Feel, a book on emotional intelligence. I think it's needed. It has nothing to do with personal finance other than there's a relationship between emotions and finance. And then Learned Optimism. Based on research, cognitive behavioral therapy in terms of how to develop an optimistic perspective. I didn't go into much detail on that today, but the optimism research is really interesting. So how we explain events to ourselves from when we do that optimistically. I know this sounds like kind of self-help rosy picture kind of stuff, but it is actually really good how we explain and kind of justify events. I have to go through this a little bit because I'm not making any sense. How we explain that has an impact on how we feel and how we move forward from it. So, for example, an optimist would explain a bad event in a very sort of flexible, external, like not personal kind of a way. So, like, for example, if the stock market, was volatile and you lost money in your portfolio, an optimist would be able to say that, okay, stock markets, they do fluctuate. It's normal for the account to move. It's not really anything that I did. And it's, stocks fluctuate sometimes. A pessimist would say, investments are too risky. They make it very broad. So investments are too risky. I made bad decisions and I don't understand stock markets and investments. So a pessimist would explain that event in a very personal, pervasive, fixed kind of a way, which is hard to move on from that. Like you can really get stuck in feeling like this event is because of me and I did a bad job and I can't move forward from that. In most cases, there are lots of external reasons why things happen. Now that's not to deflect responsibility for any personal contribution, but sometimes we overdo that piece of it as well. So cognitive behavioral therapy is used in this book to help explain how you can change your way of thinking about certain events, because we tend to explain things optimistically or pessimistically as part of kind of our natural normal style. So when bad things happen, like maybe you're trying to change behavior and, maybe I need to buy less Legos or something. If I can develop, if I revert in behavior and start to maybe impulsively just sit there on Lego.com and buy. Now that's the behavior I'm engaging in, but if I can look at that as like a short-term thing that I can overcome, that's going to be a lot healthier than looking at it as I make bad decisions and I can't do this, I can't budget. That's much too pervasive and personal, and it's hard to move on from that. So I don't know if that made any sense at all, but there's differences in optimistic and pessimistic explanatory styles, and it is really interesting to learn about that. So that's what I have for today. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Good, I'm glad. Any questions online, Tina?
Not yet, but I'm trying to spur some here.
Sounds good.
So I have a question. So the plan versus a budget. So what would you, because I'm so used to like line item sort of focused budget minded.
Yeah.
Not that I do it. I just know that that's what that's supposed to look like. So what would more of a plan?
I'm thinking of more as a reframe. Like if you have a system where you look at your expenses and you kind of plan it out, like go with what works for you. And what works for one can be very different. I've seen budgets or spending plans look very different. Like sometimes it's an Excel spreadsheet down to the dollar. Sometimes it's this high level, like, okay, I know I have X amount per month. I know that once all my fixed stuff comes off, I have maybe 5 or 4 left. And then it's a bit more based on person. You can't make someone use Excel that doesn't love Excel, right? You
Right.
can't make someone budget or look at every penny if that's not what they want to do. Like you can't fight human behavior. And the reality is there's more than one way to do a budget. Sometimes people can just keep track of it in their head and they work with like the higher level, larger round numbers, which is fine. I personally like my Excel spreadsheet. My husband is more of the, big number kind of guy, and he kind of does it that way. So we have a little like day to day, like that's where some of our financial conflict comes in, is we just manage it a little bit differently. So I would reframe it to go, like think about how you feel when you're doing your budget. And generally in the population, the word budget tends to mean to people like I'm under constraints. And like if someone asks you to do something, you might respond, oh, and I see this a lot actually with college students. They're like, oh, I can't, I'm on a budget. Like it's this thing that they feel like I can't go have fun because I'm on a budget. So if the word budget triggers that for you, get rid of the word budget, reframe it to, okay, I have a spending plan. Maybe that thing is not part of my plan. So one, you have to ask yourself, does it need to be? Did I set my plan up in a way that didn't account for something that matters to me? Then you need to revisit your plan, which is fine. But it's good to adjust those as you make them holistic. But if you look at that and the word budget and doing that activity makes you feel like constrained, restricted, that's when you really need to reframe it into, this is a plan to deploy the money I have earned or the money I have saved in ways that help me get what I want. If that feels very different, you're probably going to sit down and do that. But if you sit down, oh, I've got to do my budget, right? Who's going to do that? You might do it once or twice, but you're not going to stick with it because it's going to feel good, right? You got to reframe it. How you do it is unique to you. I like using Excel. I love using Quicken. I love connecting my cards, my Costco card, for everything. Simplicity is good. Like if you have 10 different cards, it's kind of hard to keep track of all that stuff. So I have my Costco card, I have my bank card, and I have an Amazon card. They have 5% back. So that's where we try to buy all of our things. So I have those connected to Quicken. Once, probably every couple of weeks, I'll do a download and then I'll just make sure everything's categorized and I go look at the pie chart to see where we are. I use Excel to kind of, I'm a nerd, but I have like a tax calculation. I have my income. I have, here's all of our fixed stuff. I could probably get rid of the Excel now that I'm doing Quicken. My husband keeps telling me to get rid of Excel. I'm like, no, I can't. I love it. I'm used to it. We're creatures of habit.
Right.
But I like looking at like all the little numbers, and I go out a whole year and I look at, okay, here's what we're expecting for extra stuff in January, especially as we plan the trips with the coach. This year, this is new for us. So this year we're trying to figure out where are we going, what do we want to do, and I'm having to, be a little bit more meticulous in my spending plan for that. But once I get a year of data Quicken, I can then look at, okay, this is what we did in 2022. This worked well for us. We can then plan on something like that in 23. So that's kind of a long answer to your question, but it's what it actually looks like for you. Just make sure if you're actually doing it, engaging your money, looking at it, and feeling good about it. Even if there's something you want to change, that's not a moment to feel guilt or bad or shame. But notice what you want to change, know why, and then be intentional on changing it. Just know what you're changing it to, then you've got motivation. That's where the program I think is so
I like that. I like the reviewing, because that, like, just use the word plan. It makes more sense to do it that way. So.
Yeah.
To do that, I mean, we do that naturally in so many different areas of our life anyway, right? So
Yeah.
That makes sense.
You're welcome. Thank you for
This was great. Thank you, Sarah. This is so good. And I do look forward to getting
Have
the.
fun out there. Be happy today.
Sewing machine tomorrow.
Oh, you,
Featherweight.
oh, okay,
And so Juki, featherweight,
okay.
Bernina.
Oh, I'm looking at the Berninas.
Yeah. And what else? Oh my gosh, I have a brother to drag around.
I've got the brother.
Yeah.
I got
Just
the,
to drag around like.
yeah. And I made this shirt and I made these pants.
Cool. Yeah.
Don't tell me that you can tell they're homemade.
My cousin was an engineer and he used to make his own business suits.
Did
So he
he?
worked like